Greetings, I am Erin Patten, metaphysical master in a millennial age, and it is my life's purpose to guide you and organizations along an enlightened path. So I invite you to sit comfortably and tune in as I welcome you to the MetaBusiness Millennial, where we get the real conversations you won't get in the boardroom so that we understand this is exactly the path we need to be on in order to grow, evolve, and thrive. Greetings, I am Erin Patten, host of the MetaBusiness Millennial, and I am here today with Kristin Fontana, evolutionary astrologer. And before I allow her to introduce herself, I just want to share with all of you listeners and viewers how I met this beautiful soul. So when I moved back to Houston, I always share my Harvard to Healing story. So y'all going to hear a little bit of it again. When I moved back to Houston after my dad passed away, and my mom was kind of dealing with her own mental health challenges, I reached out to Kristin because I was at a yoga class and the teacher was reading her cast as we were doing our yoga. And it was so empowering. I literally was like crying at the end of the yoga class. And I was like, who was that you were reading from? And she directed me to Kristin. And so I reached out to Kristin for a reading, and like the rest is history. I've been following her ever since. I'm on her mailing list. I contribute to her, and I'm just so honored and humbled that I get to have this full circle moment of communicating with her, sharing with her my journey, hearing her journey, and how she really inspired my metaphysical path. So without further ado, welcome Kristin to the MetaBusiness Millennial.
Thank you, Erin. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy to see you, evolving into who you are and who you came here to be.
Yes, 100%.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm grateful for it. So I'd love for you just to share what you wish of your upbringing, who you are. If you had a traditional work path, that would even be great to share too, and how that eventually led you to where you are today.
Well, gosh, yeah, I was raised in a very traditional home. It was church every Sunday, sometimes twice a week. Yeah. And astrology was not ever discussed. In fact, nothing metaphysical was ever discussed.
Right.
It's very traditional. And if I was caught reading a forecast, I'd probably be put on restriction or something. I don't know. I'd be in big trouble. So that was my upbringing.
Yeah.
But I have to say that evolutionary astrology is very much a spiritual body of work. Mm-hmm. And I'm very all about connecting to anything beyond the physical. And so even to be raised in a traditional home, like God was always at the center of everything. Mm-hmm. And so even though I went to church every Sunday, sometimes I'd be nodding, sometimes I'd be going, no, what are they saying? No. In fact, when you walked into my house, there was the biggest picture of Jesus you've ever seen.
Wow.
On the wall. Yeah, it was like, wow, people would say it was beautiful. But so I really feel like I still had such a strong, there was just still a strong spiritual energy in my home, but it was more religious. And because my soul is deeply connected to the spiritual realm, it still allowed me to feed that part of me. And, I remember my mom, even every night she would come into my room and pray with me. Mm-hmm. So she really taught me to pray in a sense, and or helped me remember how to pray. And even in a traditional conservative way, I mean, she would just say, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a certain way. What do you need today? And who do you want to pray for? So it was not only praying for yourself, but like, who do you want to pray for was always part of it. So giving has always been a part of my nature too. And giving freely of ourselves is really important. And so it's not just saying, hey, God, what can you give me? It's what can I give you? How can I help another? And that's what I was raised with. However, it was wrapped with this very traditional conservative, I guess, container. Yeah. And so it wasn't until like my 20s when I started to really rebel against that. I mean, maybe in high school too, I didn't really want to go to church every Sunday. Actually,
Mhm.
maybe as early as I could walk. I don't know. I think my church was really more in nature, climbing trees, by the ocean. That was my experience of feeling God, in nature. So
And where was that?
I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Los
Mhm.
Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm now living in Oregon, but I lived in Los Angeles or Southern California for the first 40 years of my life. I
Mm.
even had a traditional education. I was actually living about an hour south of LA in high school, but I went to UCLA and I was a pre-med student.
Wow. Smarty
Crazy.
arty.
I mean, I never really wanted to be a doctor. There was like way too much responsibility in that, but I was a competitive athlete and I love sports
Yeah.
medicine. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll work with athletes. And I love the field of kinesiology. I love studying the body. And I realize that now, Erin, it's so similar to study the body and all of its systems and organs and how everything relates and interrelates. When you're
Mhm.
looking at a birth chart or you're looking at astrology,
Mm.
it can literally be like you're looking at someone's soul and
Mm.
all the intersections, the blocks, things that aren't open, things are where you're being tested. So, for an
Mm.
example, all dis-ease in the human body is rooted in emotional unrest.
Agreed.
So when you look at the chart, you can see where any soul holds on to energy, emotional energy, and how it affects the physical body, how it affects their
Mhm.
health. Like if somebody has a strong Aries air in their chart, they might get headaches a lot or migraines, and a lot of Cancer in someone's chart might be some belly issues. Capricorn could be back, spinal, low back. And
Mm.
it all connects to something very specific. But I learned really that, or I understood that when I made this giant transition, which occurred not until my early 30s, that the way that I was understanding the body was I could transfer it into the chart in terms of a natural capacity to read something. What's broken? What needs to be fixed? How do you fix it? What's the most natural conduit for that
Mhm.
soul? Like what are their natural gifts or natural highways, to express themselves? And it was an amazing thing because I'm a natural giver, so I want to give, I want to help, I want to fix, I want to empower. And being part of team sports as well was so much a part of just like working together toward a common goal,
I love that.
being part of a tribe, and let's work
Mhm.
together on this. You don't have to be alone. And so it was really a natural transition. I mean, all this corporate America in my 20s, I was in the medical industry
Mm.
and really felt like I was helping people with what I was selling. But my soul was empty. My
Yeah,
soul was really empty because I'm like, there's got to be more than this.
I felt that.
You felt
And
that?
and when you had that moment, like there's got to be more, like, because I very similarly like worked in corporate America, was busting my ass, thought I needed more, went to Harvard for 2 master's degrees, and then was feeling even more empty. And I love to say like that's really where my education, my real education began. So do you have a moment you can speak to where whether a traumatic moment or a moment of celebration or a birth of a child or something that really started to activate that metaphysical muscle that you now have developed and so beautifully today?
I love that metaphysical muscle. So good. I love that, Erin.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what. When any soul is approaching their Saturn return, which is their late 20s, we
Yeah.
all are reviewing everything in our life all the time, and
Yeah.
energy and financial resources, whatever, for school, and you're doing everything that you think, and you've been conditioned to believe is going to be it for you. And so whether you
Mm.
married someone and you're like, what am I doing in this marriage? Or you're in a career and you're like, this is so not me. I mean, I know there's so much more than this. We
Mm.
review these things and then we figure out, okay, I've really got to change the way I'm working in my life and how I'm
Right.
spending time. Now, just because you're going through a Saturn return, 28, 29 years old, doesn't mean it gets fixed overnight.
Right.
Right? So really the work started to begin then. I mean, I was exploring everything from grad schools to personality tests. I was reading everything like, why am I here? What am I meant to be doing?
Right.
And actually, I was on my knees every day. I'm telling you, just praying, like, what is going on? I don't even feel like myself. I mean, I'm a Sagittarius. I've got 3 planets in Sagittarius. I have always been super optimistic, kind of happy go lucky on the way to this place that I had reached close to 30. And I was out of answers. Like, nothing was doing it for me anymore. Any of my go-tos that really had a way of elevating my spirit weren't working. And long story short, because there were many stops along the way, I ended up getting a reading by a woman that someone recommended I get, because I told a friend of mine, like, I feel like something beyond me is happening, like something I'm just not over or control of, not control of this, in control of this energy I'm feeling. It's like something's got its finger on me, this feeling of pressure. Where is this coming from? I've never had this feeling in my life.
Right.
And my first reading, Erin, was when I was 30 years old. My first astrological reading, I was 30 years old. It's crazy. So anyway, I'll tell you a really funny side note. Another reason this friend of mine suggested that I talk to this astrologer is because every guy I'd ever dated was a Gemini. I'm a Sagittarius, which is the opposite sign.
Yeah.
They never really worked out. I even was married to a Gemini right out of college. That ended a couple of years later. I lived with a guy that was a Gemini in my late 20s. That ended. And I was 29 years old, almost 30. I'd been married and divorced, lived with someone, and it had ended. And I was standing there and doing work that I wasn't in love with.
Right.
It was like, oh my gosh, right? Do-over. It is time for a total do-over. Anyway, so this woman was the way she was able to talk about what I was experiencing kind of blew me away. Like, how does she know all this about me? How does she know about everything that I'm feeling? And ultimately, it was a very major Pluto transit. Transiting Pluto was conjunct my sun sign, my Mercury, my South Node, which is my past. And Pluto will induce metamorphosis. It's about eliminating all the things in your life that do not serve you.
Yes.
Unwrapping you, essentially, to get you to the root of who you are. And if for lifetimes you've been operating in a certain way, or, for fear of really being who you are, for fear of judgment, for fear of persecution, what will they think of me? How will I be received? If you've got a history of memories where that didn't go so well, you're not going to want to just leap out into the world and become that again. You're like, I'm going to take this slow. I don't know. I better test the waters a little bit. So at that point for me, it was like the truth was the only thing that mattered.
Right.
Because nothing is more important than the truth. Nothing is more important than being honest with who you are, because honesty, no matter how much it hurts, maybe for another people to watch you make these big changes, will always lead to the right reality.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
I mean, when you're constantly doing things for other people or making choices because you think your parents think it's a good idea, your partner thinks it's a good idea, or society says, oh yeah, that's the thing. If you're always doing that, eventually you will collapse. It will be, it's like a superstructure that can't support your soul anymore. So what happened ultimately, it wasn't until I was 33 years old. What a number. Let's go back to that picture in my entryway growing up. That's how old Jesus was when he died on the cross. And I say this because Pluto was still really, really in contact with some personal planets in my chart. And Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth.
Yes.
So I'm not saying I'm not comparing myself to Jesus in any way.
And there's nothing wrong with that if you do.
But I definitely want to live my life in the highest way possible.
Yes.
And so I thought, wow, I'm 33 years old. And on Easter Sunday, I walked into a lecture on Saturn, which is the planet of our conditioning. It's the planet of how we dedicate our life. And if you look back in time, it's the planet in a distorted form of patriarchal influences,
Yes.
men versus women, the strong guy versus the weak guy, or whatever else. It's this male dominating energy for thousands of years that has been really taking over this planet.
Yes.
So what happens when you repress what is natural? He kept saying in this talk. And this, I don't think I mentioned this, but I walked into a lecture, yes, on Saturn, given by my teacher, Jeffrey Wolf Green, when I was 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, I had chills the entire time. Goosebumps, like physiological response to everything he said. When we repress what is natural, repressing is Saturn. When it's not in a healthy expression, it's like pushing a beach ball underwater. And it's full of emotion. It's full of your truth. When you push that beach ball underwater, how long can you hold on to it before it darts out and hits something, creates a crash over there, becomes chaotic? Whatever we repress becomes distorted in our lives. Even
Yes.
it's like anger. When you resent something or you're holding on to something and you're not talking about it, and you get one little trigger, that anger can be unleashed. And so I could just relate to so many things that he was saying that day. I felt like I was in a packed house. You could hear a whisper, and I felt like I was the only one in the room. And he was just talking to me. And I know everybody probably felt that too. But I thought, wow, this is the day. I knew this was the day I'd been waiting for 33 years. This was the day I'd been waiting for hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah. So a big part of my journey has been about hiding behind who I am, for hundreds of years and many, many lifetimes because of those persecutions in the past. Yes. It's like the wild woman trying to live in society. Doesn't work very well. When you're challenging everything or you're rebellious because you want to be whole into yourself, you don't want to be submissive, you don't want to lie beneath him, in a sense, whatever that, it's really a metaphor for things. I want equality or nothing, right?
Right.
So, it caused some problems in other lifetimes, we'll just say. So my soul really went into hiding and would hide within certain families and certain countries and certain cultures, so nobody would know who I was. That's why I ended up in this family in this lifetime. It's easy to hide when you're amongst the masses, this consensus reality. Do you know that 75% of the entire planet is in a consensus state, herd state, followers? Then we move into the individuated state, which is probably about 15% of the population. I will think for myself, thank you. And they are the rebels or the inventors, the innovators. They are not followers. They are just on the outskirts at times, but really wanting to embrace their individuality. And they have the courage to do that, these souls. And then the last 5%, 5 to 7% is in the spiritual state, which is not religion. It's people that are literally dedicating their life every day to help people on the spiritual path, etc. So 75% of the planet is in a consensus state. Those were the types of realities I would have hidden in, so nobody could know who I was. But ultimately, that beach ball pops up again. And so it did. I have memories. Were those lifetimes when I just tried to pretend I was just like everybody else? We're all unique, right? We are all unique. Nobody is really just like anybody else. We have our own fingerprint. We prove that. Nobody's is alike. So the consensus state, we all have moved through there at some point. We will move through there, and we have moved through there. Most likely nobody listening is in a consensus state. My sense is, if they're following you. But yeah, we're here to think for ourselves. We're here to be who we are and to remove the fear, the layers that have kept us from who we are and kept us from evolving. So on that day, and I'm 57 now, wow. You can do the math. That's a long 24 years ago. And I finally left corporate America when I was 35 to become a full-time astrologer. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's going to be the next question. But
Okay.
before we get to the next question, talking about that transition, I want to first stop and honor that story, because that's a beautiful story. It feels very aligned with me in terms of the timeline, the 33, the Saturn return, all those things. It really just resonated so deeply with me because I had a very similar path. Like, grew up Catholic, staunch Catholic, questioning everything in my 20s, especially myself. And, getting into the deep depression in my early 30s, suicidal, all the things, and then life happening to me as well. So I had no choice but to go to God, and to go to God outside of the structures that this planet held that energy in. And so that to me is such a beautiful, beautiful sharing. And I definitely want us to be sure to highlight the gentleman that did this for you in our show notes. So we'll be sure to capture that for folks listening who may want to tap into that lecture or other lectures from him too, because I'm sure if he inspired you, he can inspire you.
Yeah, it's the work I've done the entire time. I've gone into no other branch of astrology because everything I needed to know was right here. And it's the only body of work. You ready for this? Answer the question why.
I love it.
Okay. A lot of astrology is descriptive. It's descriptive astrology.
Yeah, it is.
We know what's happening. The astrologer doesn't need to tell you what is happening. You know that. You're living it. Questions why? Why is this happening?
Yes.
I forgot to tell you this too. After that lecture, I was, trembling. I mean, I grew up in LA. And when I didn't grow up in LA the whole time, but I was in college at that time. And because of where I was living, I ran into famous people all the time. I worked at a health club after college where all the, whether they're professional athletes or people from Hollywood, it didn't faze me because I was just grew up around it. I wasn't a part of it, but you live there, you run into people in Westwood, wherever. And it never fazed me because I don't, it's just, it's hard to explain. It's just, it's not a big deal. But when after this lecture, because I was shaking, a physiological response to what I was hearing, I was a nervous wreck to meet this soul. Like I felt like I had seen or heard something from another world, another time. Like this messenger brought me something that day that changed my life in a moment. He changed my life with good morning. Because as soon as I heard good morning, I knew I was home. Just the sound of his voice. And there will be people in our lives that we've known in other times when we are ready to grow and evolve, who will be that voice for us, who will extend that hand for us. And so I knew something powerful happened. And part of I think my nervousness around it was, what if I'm wrong? Because I was searching since my late 20s, early 30s, wondering what is my path. But I knew that moment it had to be this. I want to do this work. I want to help people answer the question, why? Why life? Why that man? Why this hard time? Why this health challenge? And when I introduced myself to him after, I said, why am I here? Why am I here? And in 30 seconds, he totally described my whole path until that point in time. Like the clouds parted, the message was delivered, and I'm like, okay, let's go.
I love it.
So it took 2 years to transition totally out of corporate America because, I had to learn the work, right? And I immersed myself in it, and I have every day since I was 33 on Easter Sunday.
Come on now. And I want this to be an inspiring story and encouragement for those who are struggling with self-doubt at any age. For us, it was late 20s, early 30s, but wherever you are at whatever age, because all souls develop and awaken at different stages and times, that doubt, sit with that doubt, because the universe is preparing the way. God is preparing the way for you to receive the answers to your questions. And that's something too that I had to learn along this journey is, the doubt, the questioning, all those things. We may not be able to fully understand it when we have the question and when we have the doubt. So that's why we have to be patient in the answering, because it's.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, the word
No.
patient popped when you said.
Yeah. Yeah, but when we have that patience in the waiting, the answers will come. That's all I was going to say. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it took 5 years for me. And I tell people God was tired of hearing from me. He's like, oh, that's her again. Here she comes. That's what I tell people. But I also know that it took that long for me to be ready for this work.
Period. That's what it really is. Because God's giving you the answers, but are you ready to receive it? And that's really where the patience is for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And in astrology, what's so amazing is people can feel something coming. I have this sense that something's coming, this anticipation of it energetically. And a lot of times that's when people call me, right? Or email me and want to set up a reading because they feel something, but nothing's manifested yet.
Yeah, that was me, 100%.
Yeah, that was you.
Mm-hmm.
And so astrology can't cause anything to happen. It's a roadmap. And it's a reflection of where you've been, why you're here, and what you're here doing, and where you're headed, your soul's intentions. And we all have a responsibility to fulfill what we came here to do.
Period.
Yeah.
And part of that fulfillment, I want to just dig into the details because this is the MetaBusiness Millennial. So we got to get to the business.
Okay.
I want to talk about that transition from corporate to full-time astrologer, because there are some listeners here. A lot of people are of the following are traditional, corporate or professional, and are seekers, are really just interested in having a self-development, a better life, more peaceful, happier life. Yet there are some of the listeners and watchers out there that actually want to embrace this as a career. Yet, like in my last episode, we're talking about like is making money spiritual. You know what I'm saying? Like, can this actually be a profession, or is spirituality? Can we make money doing this? So I really want to get into that transition for you, and then how you started to really tap into the business of being an astrologer.
An old quote that I heard in the business world days was, do what you love and the money will follow. Mm-hmm. And my dad was a musician. He wrote and published church music, and he was a director of this giant church choir. But on his days off, he would sit in his robe and his slippers with a pencil and a pad of paper and all of the music that's already printed with the music, what clefs or what bars, I guess. And he would write music on his days off. Mm-hmm. And he would always say this: I can't believe I get paid for what I do. So that was my imprint also. Do what you love, no matter what. So it was a hard one for me, Erin, really, because at that time I did marry again when I was 30. And my husband had his own business, and he was, just kind of breaking even every month. And so my corporate career was covering all of us. And then we had a couple kids in that time. I had 2 children by the time I was 35. And I was responsible for paying for our livelihood. Mm-hmm. How was I going to do this? How was I going to pull this off? I mean, there's no way you go from a corporate America job when you have benefits, company car, health benefits, everything covered, and then, a big paycheck at that time. But my mental health, my spiritual health, everything around that was priceless to me. And I knew I had to make the change. I also know that if you're doing what you're naturally supposed to be doing, that reflects your highest self, the universe will rise to meet you.
Yes.
And so the universe speaks to us all the time. It's so obvious sometimes. We just have to pay attention to the signs. To the signs. Today, Jupiter and Venus are in Aries, are conjunct. It's all about the signs, intuition, insights. Pay attention. It's setting in motion something very new for all of us. So what happened was, again, I was in a transition between corporate America and astrologer, part-time. And I just couldn't let go. My boss even talked me into staying and saying, Kristin, you could work part-time and make almost as much as you're making full-time. Please don't go. He was saying. And so I hung in there for a while, like I wanted to leave after a year, but I stayed another year till I was 35. And I'll tell you, this is such an important teaching. I was still feeling a lot of resistance and fear. Right? Fear of the unknown. Would we be okay? And one day I was walking to the front door early in the morning on the way to surgery. This is where I did my corporate work. I was in medical sales and I was in surgery most of the time with the doctors because they were using instruments I was selling. And I'm in my scrubs and had my pager with me. We didn't even have cell phones. That's how long ago it was.
They still use pagers though in the ER. I think in the medical field they still use them. I don't know.
Anyway, I collapsed on the way to the door. My back went out on me. I couldn't move. I laid there for 2 hours. I couldn't even get to the phone. So, I'm feeling my pager's going off. The hospital's paging me. The doctor's wondering where I am, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's time to go. I can't do this anymore. I can't. So your body keeps the score, right?
Period.
A lot. And so that was really the wake-up call. And I said, how long do I have to do this? I'm going to end up in the hospital. It was such a very strstressful job. I will say that job was high pressure.
And you were literally in the hospital. So you didn't
I was working in the hospital, but that day I was on the way to go to the hospital in my own house.
Oh, okay.
So here's my special Jupiter teaching too. Around that time, Jupiter, was in Aries as it is right now. And it was about to come over my moon, which if you read a traditional astrological interpretation of that, it would be like, oh, you're going to be so joyful. Everything's going to be so abundant and all good things are coming to you. You're going to feel so full. And I was miserable. I couldn't tell you how much. I was so bummed. I mean, Jupiter's like the happy Buddha planet, and I was miserable. So I emailed my teacher and I said, what is up? Jupiter's supposed to be so buoyant, so generous, so benevolent, and I have never been so miserable. And he wrote back one line and he said, what have you given up lately? And I realized what he was saying, that Jupiter expands everything it touches. So if you're doing something that's not good for you, it'll exaggerate it so badly, terribly, uncomfortably that you have to remove it. It's like having a cup of water that's overflowing. And Jupiter says, hey, Erin, I have this beautiful gift to bestow upon you, but there's no room in your cup. If you want something sweeter, you have to empty some of the cup.
Period.
So I had to get rid of the job. As soon as I knew then that the signs were everywhere. It's time. And when I finally left that job, I wanted to huck that pager into the sea. I mean, I was just so happy to get rid of it. Well, I'll tell you what happened. 3 things happened that within a month, maybe even 4 right after. The first thing that happened is my husband told me that he and his partner in his business just gave themselves a raise. So remember, I was paying for everything.
Yeah.
We were breaking even in his world. Now he's helping a little more. I'm like, wow, that's a sign. That's such a good sign. All right. That was the first thing that happened. The next thing that happened is probably the most important thing that people need to remember when they're honoring their truth. when we take strides forward that support our highest and best versions of ourselves, there will always be something to try and undermine those footsteps. Every light casts a shadow, and the brighter your light gets, the bigger your shadow, the more attractive you become. That which does not want you to be so bright and brilliant and whole. And I get a call from a headhunter who offered me a corporate job in the same field that I had, twice the amount of money I was making, right? As like a carrot or a lure. I said, sir, if I took that job, it would be like selling my soul to the devil.
Oh my gosh, I already know.
Oh my gosh. And my whole body felt toxic. Just imagine one more day of that. So that was the second thing that happened. Success. I passed the test.
Yes.
I didn't take the bait. And the third thing that happened, random, so because I had been doing astrology for 2 years, right? Not random, but for 2 years, I'd already been putting myself out there locally, etc. And a woman called me and wanted me to start a radio show in a local community. That's still going on today. It's my transit show that I do still today, 20 years later, still doing it. It's always free. Actually, it costs me money at first. You have to pay for the show. The show was for free for listeners, but I had to actually pay to have the show. But that's how it works sometimes. You have to, what do they say? You have to pay to earn sometimes.
Yeah, you got to pay to play.
Pay to play.
And really invest in yourself. I talk about this a lot here too.
So I did talk to my teacher about it, and he gave me the nod. He's like, yeah, this life is about recovering your voice.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was 1, 2, 3. And and then the next thing that happened is he said, you're supposed to write. And I started to laugh so hard because I was pre-med in college. I did not like to write. I did terrible in my English classes. I had no business, even attempting that. And but I did call the local paper and because the local horoscope authors had recently pulled the column, and I said, I want to write for your paper. I had never written a line in my life. And so the editor said, he kind of hemmed and hawed. And I said, what magazine and newspaper does not have an astrological column? Tell me. None. And he said, okay, you're right. Send me a sample of your writing. I had never written anything. I didn't think he would say yes. I actually hoped he'd say no. And so I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this now. And one Sunday, the next Sunday, I cranked out a column in like 2 hours, which is unheard of, by the way. But God just put it all into me, and I sent it over to him, and he said, it's good. I want to use it. When can you start? And then I had to start. And you know how long the next column took me? 2 days. So it just took a long time to be able to really hone that craft and to access the courage, to feel the freedom to say what I felt like needed to be told, the stories that needed to be told and what people needed to hear. And it took courage to relax around those words and to really open up. But it helped with my own healing. So anyway, that was another thing that happened. So this other teaching is when you're supposed to do something, it becomes so natural and effortless. The door just opens right in front of you and you can't help but walk through it. But it doesn't mean once you get in, it doesn't mean it's all going to be sunshine and roses and easy street. But that's another sign that you're right where you need to be. And then the work follows. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. You just said all the words, encapsulating it at the end, like that, you really know when you're aligned because it comes from God. It comes easily and it shines forth, shines through you. And the next piece of that, which you were honest about, is that it takes work. Like, even though it comes easy at first, That's so you're in alignment. And then you have to start be inspired to action day to day, day after day, day after day after day, using your authentic voice.
True.
And that takes, like we said, a metaphysical muscle that you have to strengthen. You get the download, you get the gift.
That's so true.
And then you got to hit the gym, you know what I'm saying? Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
And I love that. And so we know that you have this gift and you put this beautiful offering on the table for me at the start. So I'm going to pull up my chart and give viewers and listeners an opportunity to see you in action. Okay.
So yes, this is a picture of your birth moment, and you chose that birth moment because it reflects where your soul has been and why you're here now and where you're headed. And we focus on Pluto, which is at the highest point in your chart next to that arrow up top, like midnight on a clock. Looks like a goddess. Hello. There you go. And your Pluto's in the 10th house, which is the house of the authority, the boss. Erin's the boss of metamorphosis and metaphysics, I would say. The 9th house, which is where your moon sits to the right, is the house of metaphysics. It's a house of truth and philosophy and knowing. Not, people might say believing, but to know something is even more powerful.
Agreed.
The word lie sits right in the middle of the word belief. It's not always true. Just because we believe something doesn't mean it's true. Like fake news, you know, just because somebody's talking about it doesn't mean it's true, or believing it or wanting you to believe it doesn't mean it's true. It's our job to really get to the truth in our life, so we don't have distractions or take circuitous routes unnecessarily. But it's important too, I want to say that time is really an illusion. So when you were talking about, there's different ages and points in our life when our soul's ready for an awakening or for illumination or ready to really evolve in the way that we wish. There's a lot of things that we're all working through, relationship dynamics and personal growth. And sometimes, and a lot of the times, it takes time. And that there's a time for everything. And the astrology reflects right timing. We can call it evolutionary timing or developmental timing, or, there's key points in our journey when things are more likely to happen than others. The train can come by and stop at the station where we're standing. The doors can open. We have to choose to get on. We will be given another chance, but the longer we wait, the harder it will be to take those steps oftentimes. Then we might have to get thrown on, and that's not fun, right? So anyway, we can sit here and talk about your chart all day for many hours, weeks, in fact, and never be done. There's so many stories. There's so many layers and levels. But as an astrologer, I just speak to what I feel is important for that soul at this time. I don't want to speak too far ahead. I don't want to hang out in the past too much either, unless someone's really stuck there. But what I'm seeing for you with Pluto so close to the moon, forming a balsamic conjunction, the moon is to the right of Pluto at the top of your chart, right at midnight. We all know what that crescent moon looks like in a chart. And the moon is you as a woman in the world. It's your emotional body. The moon reflects how we feel within our inner home, as well as the home where we dwell. And the moon is so important for all of us because how we are feeling emotionally really reflects how we're doing on our journey. Even if we're on our knees, that's a good thing, to be on your knees, not to fight it, but to be open and receptive for what needs to come in, what needs to heal so you can evolve. And what I often teach is that we have to resolve before we evolve.
I received that.
Yeah, right. If there's like leftover residual unfinished business in a relationship that you could have, if someone's still pining for someone who broke their heart, entering a new relationship is going to be problematic because they'll just drag all of that into this relationship.
Yeah.
We need to resolve. We need to, or are we just going to repeat? So what I see here so powerfully in your chart I'll focus on Pluto with the moon here is it's forming what we call a balsamic conjunction. The moon has come all the way around the wheel. The planets move counterclockwise. And it's something, this work that you're doing now, I can see that you've been working on for lifetimes. And I feel too that behind the scenes a lot you have been doing this. Like in other lifetimes, you had to be secret with your teachings, right? So you didn't get caught. Mm-hmm. It's like being in the forest with crystals or with tarot cards, and God forbid the priest finds you there. You'd be in big trouble, right? I'm sure you did get caught. You do absolutely have like classic burned at the stake signatures here.
Yeah, I've been told that too.
You've always been challenging the consensus. Always. That's a good thing. I definitely see you as a torch carrier. You know, you've got Mars in the first house in Aquarius. You want to lead the masses forward. I would say you're a step ahead, a few steps ahead. You're an incredibly intelligent woman. You're a Harvard grad, you know, come on, let's go. I love it. And so I just, you know, a really, really powerful chart. So what this means in essence is you're leading people to the truth, to their truth. You're definitely a natural teacher, I would say even female shaman in a sense. And you have such powerful ability to shine a light forward and back if necessary, to look at whatever needs to be seen and to help people deal with shame around it, to release that. So this lifetime, your whole lifetime, Erin, with a Pluto moon balsamic can feel like a balsamic or like a full moon effect. You feel everything all the time, because many lifetimes, I would say at least 8, are culminating in this lifetime. So it could be, moon is also family dynamic. So family of origin, working through unresolved karma linked with those members. And really, you all too, with the moon and Libra, are a natural giver. With the work that you're doing, you are giving to others. You are a natural helper. You know what people need. And it's interesting because right now, transiting Pluto in the sky is squaring your moon. It has been for the last year. And I see this very much, again, as I'll say what I said about that transit for me back at 30 or early 30s, was that Pluto helps us eliminate the things that don't serve us anymore. And it can be uncomfortable because it can make us feel more vulnerable or insecure, because they might have been things that represented our security at one point, like my corporate job, for example. Relationships that don't give to you in equal measure will also be part of that elimination. I feel like I'm always helping this person. I'm not really receiving anything back in this relationship, in this friendship, for example. You mean, you are such a classic soul for someone who, like I said, knows what people needs. You might even attract the wounded bird in relationships, and that doesn't allow you to get what you need. So this life is about making sure that all that you give can also be received in equal measure in your relationships. And then teaching that to other women as well. And so you can see too with, gosh, this is really a big year for you. Maybe you're already feeling it. That Uranus, which is the planet of change and liberation, is going to be opposing your Saturn in that 10th house there near your Pluto. That's going to happen in, well, this summer, June timeframe for the year that follows. And this is definitely about like the jackhammer to cement. Getting rid of anything that's become crystallized in your life that you don't want to bring with you on the train. Now, this doesn't have to be, it sounds dramatic, right? But it can literally be things that are happening subconsciously from your past, long-term memories that have imprinted on you in a way. It could be any energy around judgment or shame or regret or guilt that you don't even know why it's there. Like it just feels so ancient. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, let's get rid of this. Unpacking it and literally just bye-bye. And I want to share a teaching because I think it's just coming to me that's really important for people right now. Saturn connects to, one of the emotional dynamics within Saturn is guilt. And, we all have regret in some respect. I wish I would have done it this way or that way, whatever. I wish I didn't get so upset with this person. And, there's little and large things that make us feel remorseful because we're not perfect, right? We all have our own triggers. But there's two types of guilt. There's learned guilt and there's natural guilt.
Yes.
Or, learned guilt is what we learn by our culture, or it's projected onto us, maybe from the church or whatever else it is. Especially as it relates to our bodies, right? In the Catholic Church, of course, don't touch yourself, don't do this, this is wrong, this is bad. They want everything, really controlled in that way on a sexual level. So that's like this, if people have natural feelings about wanting to explore their body in that way and instantly feeling guilt because of what they're hearing in the church, that is going to cause a pretty big beach ball effect, right? That is going to be intense. And so learned guilt is meant to be jettisoned. God does not want you carrying that. Please remove it. Free yourself. Natural guilt, which is, the things that we do that are wrong, we know they're wrong. That's meant to stay in us forever. The white lie, the talking behind someone's back, whatever it might be, bigger things, betrayals, that, hurting someone we love, even hurting someone we love because we were afraid to hurt them. I mean, there's so much there. But I remember going back to where I started, the truth is always best, no matter how much it hurts, because it always creates the right reality. So I would just say this, that anytime we carry guilt that is natural, it's meant to stay in the soul forever. So we learn from it, so we don't do whatever it is again.
Exactly.
This is a side note. I wasn't pointing at you at all, but I feel like it's an important teaching to share with people, to free ourselves. Free yourself of the stuff that's not yours, and it will allow you to rapidly evolve. What is about you right now is this Uranus transit coming this summer is going to help you shake off anything that does not define you. And I'll tell you that Uranus has not been here in 84 years. So the effects of removing anything that you've collected that is not yours to carry will be so liberating. I mean, you could probably feel like you could fly on the other side of that.
Yes. Come on, wings. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. Thank you so much, Kristin, for this reading. Thank you for this time, this space, this conversation. I want to now invite you to share with our listeners and readers how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow you, and get their own readings, their own beautiful, inspiring readings.
Thank you, Erin. I'd love to. Just my website, you can share it somewhere, but it's just KristinFontana.com. And I do offer at the moment, I used to write every week those forecasts. Now they're twice a month. And I offer a newsletter too that is also free. So you can read a little bit about how I work, even more so on my website, and read about what your sign is experiencing at this time. And it's really only designed to encourage and empower you.
And I must say that I'm an avid follower of her cast that she sends out. I share them with my friends when I'm so called, and I don't think I've missed one since I signed up. So
God is blessed.
Yes. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your teaching, for being here on this planet at this time. And to everyone else that's listening and watching us, please continue to support the MetaBusiness Millennial podcast. Follow us, like us, share it with your friends, share it with someone who needs this, especially today. I really feel like today was really, really valuable. And you can always check out more resources at themetabusiness.world, or you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, all the social media channels at I am Erin Patten. Okay, you all, thank you so much again. If you want to have any parting words,
Oh,
Kristen.
I just want to, what I wish for is for everyone listening just to have the courage to go beyond where you've been, and you too will experience a new wind at your back.
Yes, a new wind at your back all. So we love you all so much. Have a great, great experience, life, day, week. And we will see you soon on the next episode of the Meta Business Millennial. Peace.
Namaste.
Did you really love this episode of the Meta Business Millennial podcast? Well, I am honored, and I appreciate you subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends, because your feedback allows us to co-create more enlightened conversations. And if you're interested in growing your soul now, head over to my website, erinpatten.com, to find all the show notes, links, and free resources to get your energy activated today. In the meantime, stay bright, my friends. Much love and light. Peace.